Have you ever felt that wave of heat rising, your mind clouding over, words almost stumbling out of your mouth, propelled by an emotion that seems to have taken complete control? That moment when, seconds after an outburst or a sharp reply, regret washes over you, heavy, accompanied by that uncomfortable feeling of having yielded once again to the pressure of the moment. Maybe at work, a slightly harsher criticism from your boss made you react defensively, creating unnecessary tension. Or at home, a small argument about something trivial escalated into a battle of wills, leaving a trail of silence and hurt. If these scenarios sound familiar, know that you're not alone. This struggle to maintain composure under pressure, to not be a hostage to your own reactions, is one of the most common and draining battles of modern life. And the consequences? They range from eroding respect and lost opportunities to an ever-dwindling sense of inner peace. But what if I told you there's a key, mental switch, tested and approved by some of history's greatest thinkers, capable of giving you back the helm of your emotions? A tool that can not only stop these outbursts before they begin, but also help you build genuine respect, both from others and, perhaps more importantly, from yourself. We're talking about ancient wisdom, Stoicism, but applied in an incredibly practical way to today's challenges. In this video, we're going to unveil the Stoic Mind Switch, the internal mechanism that allows you to pause, analyze and respond with intelligence and calm, even when everything around you seems chaotic. If you're ready to transform your impulsive reactions into thoughtful responses and start reaping the rewards of true self-mastery, stay with me. What you're about to learn here could be the first step towards profound and lasting change. Think about how many times a word spoken in the heat of the moment undermined your authority or hurt someone you care about. Imagine the opportunities for collaboration, leadership, or even deeper personal connections that may have been sabotaged by an inability to manage your own internal storms. The cost of being reactive is high, draining our energy, affecting our relationships, and deep down, making us feel out of control of our own lives. This isn't about suppressing emotions or becoming a cold, distant person. On the contrary, it's about understanding your emotions on a deeper level and channeling them in a way that serves your greater goals rather than destroying them. The beauty of Stoic philosophy and the mind switch concept we'll explore lies precisely in its simplicity and immediate applicability. We're not talking about abstract theories or mental exercises impossible to practice in the middle of a chaotic day. We're talking about a change in perspective, a skill that can be learned and strengthened over time, like a muscle. By mastering this mental key, you'll not only avoid the regrets of thoughtless outbursts, but also begin to radiate a calm and confidence that naturally attract respect and admiration. This is the path to becoming the master of yourself, not a slave to circumstances or emotional triggers. Why is it that, even knowing the consequences, so many times we simply explode? Why does reason seem to take a vacation just when we need it most? To understand how to disarm this trap of impulsivity, we first need to look inward at the biological and psychological roots of our reactivity. Our brain, in its essence, still carries the hardware of our ancestors, programmed for rapid fight-or-flight responses to perceived threats. A more primitive part of it, the amygdala, often hijacks command before our prefrontal cortex. The seat of rational thought and decision-making has a chance to clearly process the situation. In modern life, saber-toothed tigers are no longer physical, but take the form of a curt email, unexpected criticism, chaotic traffic, or pressure for results. For those who daily walk the tightrope of the corporate environment, or for those who feel the weight of family expectations, each of these stimuli can be the trigger for an adrenaline rush, leading to disproportionate responses that, in retrospect, rarely solve the original problem. On the contrary, they often amplify it, creating a vicious cycle of stress and regret. The cost of this constant reactivity is immense. It erodes our mental health, sabotages our relationships, and prevents us from reaching our full potential. This impulsivity isn't a sign of character weakness, but rather a reflection of how our nervous system is programmed to prioritize survival, even if, in today's world, this programming often leads us to shoot ourselves in the foot. The young person who fears appearing vulnerable by expressing disagreement calmly and ends up raising their voice, or the experienced professional who, after years of dedication, feels a sting of disrespect in a comment and reacts with cutting irony, are both, on some level, responding to an internal alarm that doesn't always correspond to the reality of the threat. It's a kind of emotional short-circuit, where the intensity of the reaction is disproportionate to the stimulus that provoked it. The Stoics, astute observers of human nature, understood this over 2 millennia ago. They didn't have modern neuroscience to explain the mechanisms of the amygdala or prefrontal cortex, but they accurately identified the internal process that leads us from perception to action. They spoke of phantasiae, impressions, appearances, the first thoughts or images that arise in our mind in response to an external event. A colleague's comment, a news headline, someone's facial expression, all these generate a first impression. The problem, according to them, isn't in the impression itself, which is often automatic and involuntary, but in what we do with it. This is where the danger of hasty assent lies. To assent, for the Stoics, means to agree with this first impression, to accept it as true, and to allow it to dictate our emotional state and subsequent reaction. If the first impression is that we've been offended and we hastily assent to it, anger is the almost inevitable consequence. If the impression is that something terrible will happen and we give our immediate approval, anxiety sets in. This speed between impression and assent is the fertile ground where reactivity flourishes, catching us off guard and often leading us to act in ways we later deeply regret. Think about the impact of this at different stages of life, from the young adult learning to navigate the complexities of first jobs and serious relationships, where every piece of negative feedback can feel like a final judgment, to the more mature individual who may carry old emotional triggers, easily activated by situations reminiscent of old wounds. In all these cases, the lack of space between the initial impression and the final response is what allows emotions to hijack reason, leading to a behavioral pattern that prevents the cultivation of the serenity and respect we so desperately seek. Recognizing this mechanism is the first fundamental step to begin deactivating it. The truth is, by living on emotional autopilot, we allow external factors to dictate our inner state. Criticism at work doesn't just ruin your day, it can sour your interactions at home hours later. The fear of judgment in a social situation doesn't just cause momentary discomfort. It can prevent you from sharing valuable ideas or forming meaningful connections. This reactivity makes us predictable in our outbursts and vulnerable in our interactions, undermining the image of stability and confidence we wish to project, whether it's to get that promotion, to be a safe harbor for our family, or simply to navigate life with more ease and dignity. It's like being in a drifting boat, tossed about by every wave of emotion, without a rudder to guide the course. The consequences accumulate, relationships strained by the repetition of useless arguments, opportunities lost due to a lack of composure at crucial moments, and a persistent sense of frustration with oneself, as if an invisible force were always sabotaging one's best intentions. The regret that follows an impulsive reaction is a heavy burden, and the feeling of not having control over one's own emotions can be profoundly disheartening, affecting self-esteem and confidence in one's ability to cope with life's challenges. But the Stoics offer us a liberating perspective. They remind us that while we cannot control external events or the first impressions they generate in us, we have total sovereignty over our judgment and our response to these impressions. It is in this small yet immensely powerful space between stimulus and response that our freedom and our ability to cultivate serenity reside. Understanding the trap of impulsivity is crucial, but even more important is knowing that there is a way out, a method to install a new operating system in our mind. And it is precisely this method, this master key to self-control, that we will discuss next. Imagine for a moment that within your mind there's a kind of switch, a precise and powerful mechanism, not an ordinary light switch, but a mental switch, your Stoic Mind Switch. This switch has an extraordinary function. It allows you to pause the automatic flow between an impression arriving from the external world and the emotional reaction that would normally follow. It's the ability to create a small but decisive gap of time and awareness, where before there was only an impulsive short circuit. Think of it as the pause button for your reactive mind, giving you the power to no longer be a mere passenger of your emotions, but the conscious pilot of your responses. This mind switch is not a modern invention, nor an empty metaphor. It is the essence of one of the most important disciplines of practical Stoicism, the discipline of assent. As we've seen, first impressions, the fantasy I, arise spontaneously. You don't choose to feel a pang of irritation when someone cuts you off in traffic or a chill down your spine before an important presentation. These are almost physiological reactions, where your power truly lies, and where the mind switch comes into play is in your ability to examine this impression before assenting to it. That is, before agreeing with it and allowing it to transform into a dominant emotion and subsequently an unthinking action. The great Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught us something fundamental. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about things. This sentence is the master key to understanding the mind switch. The event itself, the criticism, the traffic, the challenge, is, in its nature, neutral. It only acquires positive or negative emotional charge through the lens of our judgment, the interpretation we give it. The mind switch is the mechanism that allows us to clean this lens, to question our automatic interpretations, and crucially, to choose a more rational judgment, more aligned with our values and long-term goals, instead of being swept away by the first wave of feeling. Activating this switch is, therefore, an act of reclaiming your mental sovereignty. It's recognizing the dichotomy of control, another pillar of Stoic thought, the clarity to distinguish between what we can control and what we cannot. We cannot control the behavior of others, the storms of life, or the accidents that happen, but we can and must control our own responses, our own judgments, and our own actions. The mind switch is the tool that makes this distinction not just a philosophical idea, but a daily practice, allowing you to direct your energy towards what is truly within your reach, your internal choices. So, how does this mind switch operate in the internal practice of our mind? Think of it as a conscious filter. When an external stimulus occurs, a harsh word, an unforeseen event, a provocation, it generates a first impression, like a spark. Without the mind switch active, this spark immediately finds the flammable material of our prejudices, fears, and insecurities, and the emotional explosion is almost instantaneous. You feel anger, anxiety, or frustration take over, and your response is dictated by this dominant emotion. The body reacts, the mouth speaks, often before the rational part of the brain even registers what is happening. With the mind switch engaged, the process is different. The same spark of the first impression arises, but instead of directly hitting the flammable material, it first passes through this conscious filter. It's as if you internally say, "Wait a moment, What is this I'm feeling? Does this impression correspond to reality? Is this something under my control or not? What is the most virtuous and effective way to respond to this instead of simply reacting? This brief pause, this self-inquiry, is the mind switch in action. It doesn't eliminate the first impression, but it prevents it from automatically converting into an overwhelming emotion and an unthinking action. It works, therefore, not by suppressing emotion, but by questioning the judgment that fuels it. If someone criticizes you, and the first impression is, he's attacking me and trying to humiliate me, the likely reaction is defensiveness or anger. But if the mind switch allows you to pause and question, is this really a personal attack or clumsy feedback? Even if it's unfair criticism, will responding with anger improve the situation or my state of mind? You open space for a different judgment. Perhaps you conclude that the criticism is unfounded, but that your inner peace is more valuable than winning this argument. Or perhaps you perceive a grain of truth that can be useful, separating it from the way it was delivered. In this way, the mind switch transforms you from a passive reactor into an active and intentional responder. It gives you the ability to choose your thoughts and, consequently, your emotions and actions, instead of being constantly dragged along by them. It's a process of constant vigilance and re-evaluation of our own mental processes. It's not something mastered overnight, but each small activation of this switch strengthens the muscle of self-control and practical wisdom, paving the way for more stable tranquility and more solid respect, both internal and external. Understanding the mind switch is the first step. Learning to activate it consistently is the journey that truly transforms. Fortunately, Stoic philosophers weren't just theorists. They were masters of practice, and they bequeathed us an arsenal of robust mental techniques designed specifically to help us create that crucial space between stimulus and response. The first and perhaps most fundamental of these techniques is incredibly simple in its conception, yet profoundly effective: the conscious pause, or as I like to call it, Seneca's pause. Seneca, one of the great exponents of Stoicism, advised that before acting on the impulse of a strong emotion, especially anger, we should allow ourselves a moment of stillness, a brief postponement of reaction. Think of it as physically pressing the pause button on your mind switch. When you feel that wave of heat rising, your heart accelerating, words ready to leap from your mouth in a torrent, stop. Just stop. Take 1 or 2 deep breaths. This act, however simple it may seem, interrupts the automatic pattern of reactivity. It creates a gap, a window of opportunity for your reason to begin operating. The beauty of Seneca's pause lies in its universality and accessibility. You don't need any special equipment, no calm environment. It can be practiced in the middle of a heated argument, upon receiving a frustrating email, or when your children are testing the limits of your patience. The initial goal is not to solve the problem instantly, nor to have a brilliant philosophical answer on the tip of your tongue. The goal is simply not to make things worse with an impulsive reaction you will certainly regret later. This pause is your first act of self-mastery. Once you've managed to create this momentary pause, the next step is to actively engage your rational faculty. And here, the Stoic philosopher Epictetus offers us a tool of unsurpassed mental clarity, strategic self-inquiry. Epictetus urged us to examine our impressions with direct and objective questions, challenging their validity and their power over us. One of his most emblematic questions, which we can adapt, is this thing that disturbs me something under my control or not? This simple question is the core of the dichotomy of control applied in practice. By clearly identifying what is outside your control, you can consciously withdraw your mental and emotional energy from these aspects, like a general refusing a battle they cannot win. But Epictetus's self-inquiry doesn't stop there. Faced with an impression that causes you fear or aversion, he suggested we ask ourselves, Is this thing really as terrible as it seems at first glance? What's the worst that can really happen? And if it does, will I not have the internal or external resources to deal with it? This cooler, more rational analysis, initiated by simple questions, is the mind switch beginning to discern and choose a more useful and less paralyzing perspective. The Stoics understood that surprise is a great amplifier of suffering. What catches us off guard tends to destabilize us much more. Negative visualization, therefore, is not an invitation to pessimism, but an exercise in realism and mental preparation. It consists of dedicating a few moments to contemplate the things that could go wrong. This isn't about wallowing in catastrophic scenarios to fuel anxiety, but rather about rationally anticipating obstacles. If you anticipate that a colleague might be particularly critical in a meeting, you can mentally prepare a calm and assertive response instead of being caught off guard and reacting defensively. Premeditatio malorum allows you to rehearse your resilience and your thoughtful responses, transforming potential sources of acute stress into manageable problems. Cognitive reframing is the art and science of deliberately changing the way you interpret a situation in order to alter your emotional and behavioral response to it. Remember Epictetus's teaching: it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Reframing acts directly on these judgments. It's about finding an alternative, often more constructive or empowering, perspective for an event that initially seems negative or threatening. For example, you're stuck in terrible traffic. The initial frame, "What anger, my day is ruined." The reframing, "Okay, this is out of my control. I can use this unexpected time to listen to an interesting podcast or simply practice patience." The external event is the same, but the internal experience is completely transformed. The key is to look for the virtuous use of circumstances. Even in the most difficult situations, we can ask, how can I use this to practice courage, patience, or wisdom? As you begin to consistently practice these techniques, something truly transformative starts to happen. That interval between stimulus and your response begins to widen. The mind switch ceases to be an abstract concept and becomes a lived experience, and the first fruit reaped is a drastic reduction in the frequency and intensity of your emotional outbursts. This ability to navigate tense situations without losing composure has a profound impact on how others perceive you. Think of that colleague who always remains calm under pressure. That type of person naturally inspires confidence and respect, right? By mastering your mind switch, you begin to become that person. Your team, your friends, your family will start to notice a new stability in you. Provocations lose their effect, and your words, now spoken with intention and calm, gain much greater weight and credibility. Relationships are fertile ground for testing our self-control. Before, a small disagreement could escalate into a bitter argument. Now, imagine that same situation with your mind switch active. You pause, listen attentively, check your own triggers, and seek an empathetic understanding. The discussion might still occur, but it stays within the realm of ideas, not personal attacks. In the workplace, this transformation is equally powerful. You present your points calmly and logically, even in the face of objections. Your ability to maintain composure not only earns the respect of your peers and superiors, but also makes your contributions much more persuasive. This mental clarity has a direct effect on your decision-making ability, allowing you to evaluate options more objectively and consider long-term consequences. And the respect you build isn't just external. Perhaps the sweetest fruit of self-control is the deep respect you develop for yourself. Every time you choose a thoughtful response instead of an impulsive outburst, you reinforce your self-efficacy and self-confidence. The feeling of being controlled by your own emotions is replaced by the certainty that you possess the internal tools to face whatever life throws at you. This inner peace and self-confidence are invaluable and radiate into all areas of your existence, making you not only a more respected person, but fundamentally more serene and fulfilled. Mastering the mind switch is like learning to play a musical instrument. Constant practice is the secret. To ensure this skill becomes second nature, incorporate small Stoic rituals into your routine. Consider keeping a Stoic journal. At the end of each day, reflect on situations that tested your self-control. Note how you reacted, which techniques you used, and what you could have done differently. This simple act of self-analysis is incredibly powerful for identifying patterns and celebrating progress. Another valuable practice is the daily review. Before sleep, mentally review the events of your day. Ask yourself, where did I fail today regarding my principles? What did I do well? What lessons can I draw for tomorrow? This isn't about harsh self-judgment, but an honest assessment focused on continuous improvement. We've reached the end of our journey today, but for you, this could be the beginning of a profound transformation. Together, we've explored the power of the Stoic Mind Switch, this incredible internal ability to pause the whirlwind of emotions and consciously choose how to respond to the world. We've seen that we are not doomed to be hostages of our impulsive reactions. On the contrary, within each of us lies the strength to cultivate calm, clarity, and composure. The tools of the ancient Stoics, Seneca's pause, Epictetus's self-inquiry, the visualization of challenges, and cognitive reframing are timeless keys to emotional freedom and self-mastery. Remember, you have the power to become the master of your reactions, to transform impulsivity into intentionality, and to build, day by day, an inner fortress of serenity and respect. Change doesn't happen overnight, but every small victory, every time you activate your mind switch and choose a wiser response, is a firm step in that direction. The inner peace and respect you so seek are within your reach, just waiting for your decision to practice. And now, I invite you to take the next step. The next time you feel provoked, challenged, or about to explode, choose one of the techniques you learned today and put it into practice. Observe what happens. And to continue receiving insights and practical strategies like these, to strengthen your journey in modern Stoicism and transform your life, I warmly invite you to subscribe here to the Modern Stoic channel. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, which are made with the aim of helping you build a more virtuous and resilient life. I'd love to know which of the mind switch techniques resonated most with you. Leave your comment below, sharing your favorite or the one you're most eager to try. And of course, if there's any topic within practical Stoicism that you'd like to see covered in our future videos, your suggestion is very welcome. Thank you for accompanying me this far. Remember, control your reactions, build your respect. Until next time.